today, and she's like, again? It's like, well, it's been like, and then I'm like, well, whatever, pandemic time is strange.
There is no real time. Well, in the fit as well on this one, I've hit the record button again,
Okay.
so we're rolling
Cool.
where we're at. The that was specifically for this. This is part of a the broader series of talking with folks that are council candidates or currently sitting council members for 2021 here, and it just wasn't the right fit to say, oh well, we've already done one with Jessica. We'll just play that one again. It's like, no.
Yeah.
And we explored a lot of cool stuff in that first conversation. Talking about you coming to Carbondale when you were young, and then leaving Carbondale a little bit. Was it after college or in the midst of college for the political work that you did in Montana?
Okay. Yeah. I went to college in Maine, and then after college went to Montana for a little over a year.
So
two M states to confuse you. 2 M states to confuse you.
At least it wasn't Missouri, right? No.
Right.
We're just as close as we need to be. But having kind of lived that back and forth, life with Carbondale as kind of an anchor, right? And seeing folks out in the community that have a very similar story. I mean, do you have, other folks in your life that have kind of that similar relationship to Carbondale? I've come here, I've gone, I've come back. This is always the place that I can find myself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think a lot of people call it a black hole, which I don't think, that has a negative connotation. I think we could probably get away from that. Actually, I just found out about this cool. So last time I know we talked a lot about podcasts, but there's one that I've gotten into, I think since then, called Stuff You Should Know.
Ooh.
And they talked about blue holes, which are in the ocean.
Huh.
And they sound amazing. So anyways, maybe we could call it a blue hole. So it still sucks in like sea creatures who sometimes fall in and die, and that's kind of depressing too, but
it just has its own special gravity.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, and it's like staying here every Christmas, some people will come back that in high school or whatever, and you're like, oh, hey. And then also every May, especially working on campus, it's kind of sad because people graduate and move away, and you're happy for them to graduate, but then, I don't know. It's interesting is what I'm saying, because it has that cyclical nature of a university town where new people come and then they stay for a while and then they graduate and leave. And then also being from here around the holidays, sometimes people come back and, you got to go to Quattro's and, depending on everybody's favorites, Harbaugh's, Thai Taste, whatever they are craving. That's always interesting, too, to see which friends or family with my brother coming back to visit sometimes, which craving they want to satisfy.
What did she got to scratch?
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
And it's so funny just like looking at Tres Hombres as the go-to. That's your Thanksgiving, Christmas. That's the holiday bar.
Yeah. PK's too sometimes, or the cellar. It depends. Yeah.
On who your holidays are with.
Yeah. Exactly.
Now, we may touch on stuff as we go through here that we've talked about before. I think we're just going to reinforce that Jessica is the awesome person that she is. I think it's gonna be difficult to not at some point in time talk about. Pronounce your dog's name for me again.
Sarabi.
Just
think of the Lion King when Scar yells out Sarabi. when I'm really mad at her, that's what I think of it.
How because I saw you posted the face print in the snow. Is she a snow dog?
Yes. I also posted a video of her doing the zoomies in the snow.
Mm-hmm.
She loves it. She still won't go out without me, which is annoying. She won't spend much time outside without me.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she loves the snow. Which is annoying because, I mean, there were days during the snowstorm I didn't even want to walk her. I was like, all right, just go out in the yard, do your thing. I'll be inside. And, it takes more time to, like, put on all your boots and layers and mittens, and then you go outside and you can only get so far in walking before you're like, all right, well, that's all that's plowed. Let's go back. And then it took more time to get all your layers on than it did to actually walk, so it's very annoying.
It's the only thing I don't like about the snow is that I have to put pants and real shoes on.
Yeah.
Not a fan.
Well, in my car, I've still only been able to get my car like 20% into my driveway, and that's with a lot of, sliding and horrible noises. So, in fact, I was debating when I left to come here. I was like, I might just park on the street again because it's melting, but it's not even a steep driveway. It's just got that little bit of a hill.
Mm-hmm.
With a two-wheel drive,
Mm-hmm.
you can't always do it.
It's one of those fun Carbondale driveways where it's like, again, does it have one of those like weird bumps?
Yeah.
Okay, because we've got that all over the town. Like it's like there are just driveways where it's like, okay, it's not a straight shot. You just got this weird little plateau in the middle of a driveway up a very slight incline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep, exactly. So, yeah, I was annoyed because on the Wednesday after the snowstorm, I had to go to work, and I got my car halfway out before it got stuck, and so then it was halfway in the road, and I couldn't just be like, oh, sorry, can't come to work, I'm stuck. So, because it was halfway in the road, so luckily one of my neighbors heard, and then two other neighbors heard, and 3 of my neighbors came out, and we eventually got my car out, and then one of them was like, okay, when you get home, just gun it, and then whatever you do, don't stop on the incline. And yeah, still like even with all the major snow melting, I still can't get the car up the driveway. But anyways, that's not interesting to talk about.
Yeah, that's fair.
Even though it's very universal.
And we are here to have our interesting conversation with an interesting Carbondale person, tying it all back together to this little old place we call home, Carbondale, Illinois. It is episode 40 of the WTF Carbondale podcast, and a special podcast this episode because it's our first repeat guest, having Jessica Bradshaw back on the show as a person who is part of the pool of candidates for the 2020 Carbondale municipal election, as well as a currently elected official, which ties back into, right, we talked about how you got to Carbondale and all that fun stuff. And one of the interesting things to explore with you is not just, the family politics and the work that you've done there, which we'll talk about, but having learned from like a real political organization of like how to play the game.
Yeah, I can't believe in some ways that it's been 8 years that I've been on the council. And, this will be my 4th campaign because I campaigned once before and didn't get on. And then the second time I did. I do have to correct you. You said 2020, but
Did
it's
I say
2021.
Ooh, 2021. Yeah,
which
shame
is
on me. Thank you.
Interesting because in so many ways it feels like the 14th month of 2020 because we're just stuck in this weird pandemic time,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. That, again, going back to the last year and the upcoming month or so before the election, my birthday is March 9th, which 1 year ago on March 9th, that's when the governor's declaration began.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so weird to think about because I remember going out to lunch at Harbaugh's that day and just with a couple friends, and we were talking and chatting, and we were like, man, this thing's kind of weird, right? Like just this pandemic thing. And or it wasn't even a pandemic yet. Well, I guess it was, but anyways,
We didn't have the language for it at that
right,
time.
like this virus is kind of weird. And like, who knew that that would be the last time I'd be able to sit down and eat with friends, like without masks and
Right.
without worrying
Without worrying.
and
such a key
inside, I guess.
component.
I mean, I won't be eating inside for a while. Maybe outside. I guess I've done outside eating, but with other people. I mean, obviously. But yeah, no, it was just weird for a while whenever the governor would start his press conferences, like on March 9th. Like, oh, that's my birthday. And now here it is, almost my birthday again. And I don't know. It's just weird. It's weird, man.
I think anybody who thinks there is a full return to normal, I think, is kidding themselves.
Yeah.
I just, I would love for there to be rooms full of people for me to perform to.
I
I'm
know.
just not going to sit here and kid myself like that's just going to snap and happen overnight again.
Like rock concerts. Remember rock concerts?
Yeah.
And not
Remember
even like
sunset concerts. Ah.
yeah. I mean, I was like not even like arena concerts, but like just like a band at like Hangar 9 or the Sunset concerts or whatever. Like that's never gonna happen. I'll be like, ugh, get away from me. Like
right. and it's like everybody that you would want to be around is probably going to have a very similar feeling to
Yeah.
that. Like it's even if we were to all be like, yeah, we're going to gather, and then we're going to be like, but do we really want to? I don't know, man.
Yeah. And I was thinking about it too because I remember so my birthday was kind of normal. I mean, when you're an adult, what do you do for your birthday
Yeah.
anyways? But, we went out to lunch and then whatever. And I remember there were all these memes in April about like, how lonely April birthday people were. Like, sitting, it was like the picture of the guy sitting alone on a swing set and then that stopped because that's now everybody's birthday, basically.
It's literally been an entire year of now everybody's the lonely person. on the
Yeah,
swing.
yeah. But now that I'm, I'm having a birthday again, I'm like, what am I going to do? Am I going to risk, maybe if the weather's nice, we could do like an outdoor bonfire.
Yeah.
Or, we could have something and we just all wear masks, what am I going to do?
Yeah. And I wonder to see if mask wearing is here to stay for a lot of folks, right? Not that you'll go out and you'll see, rooms full of people where every single person is wearing a mask when we've, declared an end to the pandemic and whatever else. And we say, back to normal, quote unquote. But like, are we still going to have, in large gatherings of people in public places, a good chunk of folks that are like, I'm just going to wear my mask. That's
Yeah.
just what I do now.
Yeah. I'm kind of okay with it. Like,
Yeah.
I was talking to my mom about it because I was like, I always used to wonder when, I guess it was at like Disneyland or in airports, like crowded places, occasionally you'd see someone wearing a mask.
Mm-hmm.
And like then it seemed kind of weird, but now I'm like, and I used to be more of a germaphobe,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's kind of back. And so I'm like, yeah, no, I mean, especially if they like, because back then, I mean, I was younger, I was a kid, but I would look at people with a mask like, are they sick?
Yeah.
Like, why is that person wearing a mask? Like, something wrong with them. But now I realize, like, oh no, they were probably trying to stay safe. And now, especially now that there's like fashionable, cool masks, you know, why not?
Well, and I think the real testament to all this will be in 10, 20, 30 years when all the kids who grew up going through this, like, you know,
Man.
this is a pivotal thing for anybody that's, you know, young and in some sort of institutionalized setting where, like, you know, they're conditioned to put on a mask and wear a mask, and, you know, school or work or whatever it may be in particular places for young folks. Do they carry that on and that continue to be a thing that goes generation by generation moving forward, that we wear masks now?
They're going to need so much counseling, but we all need counseling, so
That is the truth.
especially right now.
So sorry, I when I was leading into kind of the political chops conversation, I was interested
Yes.
in doing some more exploration on the organization that you worked for in Montana. I remember you talked about it being a place where it was like this lodge that somebody had like donated to the organization, and that's why it was located in rural Montana. And there were just like some interesting and unique components around, you know, getting out there that I was interested in exploring.
Yeah, it was a town of 900 people, and it was there because somebody in their will or whatever just gave this land with an old ski lodge to, it was Project Vote Smart.
Okay.
Now it's on a college campus, and I forget if it's University of Arizona or University of Iowa. I think they may have moved to Iowa.
Okay.
It used to be in Arizona, but they were fully like every election they'd get tons of interns, tons of volunteers, and increased staff too. I want to say there were maybe 16 full-time staff people, but I feel like that there were more, but for some reason that number sticks in my mind. But you know, I lived in a house with 2 other staff people, and we'd just commute from this little town of Phillipsburg, Montana, in the middle of nowhere, and drive to work. Sometimes we'd get stuck in cow traffic. I'm not even kidding. Like, sometimes we'd get stuck by a moose. That happened once. Not sometimes, but yeah, it was pretty crazy. And I could have stayed, but it got really cold there. Like, really, really cold.
Like, not just 1 degree and it's 1 degree for a little while and there's some ice on the ground. It's like sustained freezing cold.
Yeah, and like a lot of snow. So it was beautiful, but not worth it. So I came back here after that, and stayed in my parents' RV behind their house because I had 2 cats at that point, and they had dogs, and they were pretty outdoorsy, prey-driven dogs, so we weren't sure how that would work out. So I came back, and then that was kind of challenging, so I moved to California, and man, I don't know if anyone who's watching has ever worked for or seen these jobs advertised, like U.S. PIRGs, Public Interest Research Group, or in my case it was Clean Water Action. And it's basically like, for young people, it's like very they appeal a lot to recent college grads, and
Mhm.
they say, "Oh, come work and it's I forget what they call it. Like, you'll be doing stuff and promoting the environment or save the children or whatever, but it's basically just sales for nonprofit organizations
Yeah, like you're just calling people asking for money.
or going door to door in
Oh
my
wow.
case. And so what happened is I got this job offer with Clean Water Action. Well, I got this job interview set up. And they said, "Well, we don't do phone interviews. You'd have to come here." And I was sick of living in the RV in the winter. So my sister at the time lived in San Jose. So I moved out there, and I was like, well, if it's an in-person on the job interview, then odds are pretty good, right? So I moved out there, stayed with my sister, did this on the job interview, and you literally go out with someone and knock on people's doors and say, "Hi, I'm with Clean Water Action, and I'm hoping that you can help save the bay or whatever
Yeah.
and donate, you know, I don't remember if it was donations or joining Clean Water Action or whatever, but it's basically door-to-door sales
Yeah.
for a nonprofit. And God, I still remember halfway through the day. And then so I went to San Francisco. They take you on a car in a van, and then they took us to like San Mateo or somewhere. The whole sales team was dropped off. Halfway through the day at lunchtime, we got lunch. The person who I was shadowing was like, "I don't think this is for you." And I was like, "Okay." And she said, "So you could either like take the bus back to San Jose or wait till the end of the day and then ride the van back to the city with us and then go home." And I was like, "I don't know how to get from San Mateo to San Jose, so I guess I'll just hang around." This was before super smartphones. I mean,
Yeah.
I had a cell phone, but
You just had the numbers in your cell phone and
yeah.
brick breaker.
So I
and that
was
about
stuck
it.
there on a job interview that I wasn't going to get for another 4 hours or whatever. And then I had to go back in the van with everyone. It was awful. Like the whole afternoon, I felt like crying because I had moved there with this idea that I was going to be doing something awesome for Clean Water Action.
Yeah.
And then it ended up being horrible. Like, yeah, it was just awful. So
It's a disappointing that there is even activity like this in the working world in the USA, right? Where these things that really don't feel like they should be jobs are jobs, and like you have to be a very like particular kind of person to even be able to shoulder like the crappy parts of what that is. And like, traditional sales is one thing, right? Working in some sort of laborious environment is one thing, but to be like tasked with essentially shaking down people for money but not really necessarily telling them or giving them a great idea of what you're shaking them down for, I don't know.
yeah.
That's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah. And I almost got pulled into it later too. I was walking through Berkeley like a couple years later. I'd had a couple more jobs, didn't work out, moved around a little bit around California. And I remember my friend and I were walking around Berkeley, and this guy came up to us and was like, "Hey, do you want to donate, $20 to help save the whales, to help Greenpeace?" And I
Yeah.
was like, "No, but I would love to work for Greenpeace." And he gave me some contact info and said, call, and then I called and came in for some at least that day, it was like a bunch of people coming in and learning about this pitch, this job sales pitch. And it wasn't even Greenpeace that day. It was like Save the Children, because it was like a company doing this thing for nonprofits. And I was like, nope, not falling for this again. So I walked out. So at least that was a little bit better. Like, you didn't have to sign up for a whole day. But yeah, no, it's horrible. I mean, and the thing is, it gets, and I remember somebody wrote an article about this years ago, I think in Yes Magazine. And it was someone who I had met too, through this other, I don't remember how, but somebody had wrote an article about how these jobs just crush the hopes and dreams of all these new graduates, all these young people who are like, yeah, I want to work for social environmental causes. And then they end up doing these jobs and they're just like, no, never mind.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to make minimum wage selling memberships to organizations. Like, this is awful. And then they go and get, whatever else kind of job. So it sucks.
You wonder with an organizational structure like that, right? What value are the folks that get solicited into actually paying or joining or have bought into the sales pitch, right? Like, what kind of dismay they may have on the other end of it if an organization, makes claims and then fails to deliver just the same.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's probably like any kind of, low paying basic job. The people who really need it will stay there until they get something better. And the people who are like, screw this, are just gonna, there's probably a certain amount of high turnover that they're willing to cope with. And then also the expectation that some people will just be like, well, job is a job.
Yeah. Just happy to have it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's even, relatable. It wasn't Bank of America. Who was the bank that like had their call centers like running scams on people and opening up a bunch of different accounts, and overcharging them? And
yeah.
We may not remember exactly which bank it was, but you're familiar with that happening.
Yeah.
It's just a similar thing there. Oh, well, people get recruited in these jobs. They're like, oh, I'm going to get my foot in the door in the banking industry.
Yeah.
And it's like, no.
Yeah.
That's not the reality of it. It's a bummer.
So I was in California, not having much luck with job stuff.
Yeah.
And then in 2006, my dad declared that he was going to run for governor here in Illinois for the Green Party.
Yeah.
And so I ended up moving back here to help out his campaign, because I was working at a bakery, like a Panera-like place that was a small chain. So it wasn't even, and actually I'd quit that job because here's another thing that annoys me, around Super Bowl Sunday, or on Super Bowl Sunday, my manager called in the baker in the afternoon. And if you know anything about bakers and bakery hours, this is true at every bakery. They come in really early so that they can bake the bread. So at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, that's like midnight. Like, this person was not happy to come in, and I still remember him coming in just so pissed that the manager had called him back in when he was asleep and baked 40 more baguettes. And the game was about to start, apparently, or at least people had made all their purchases. We baked 40 more baguettes, maybe sold 2 or 3,
Ugh.
and then the rest we threw away. And it was one of those places in, you know, so many cities. I mean, and we were in the suburbs. We weren't even in, it was San Jose, but it was the suburbs of San Jose. But we put them in a trash receptacle behind a, you know, cement thing that I can't remember if it locked, but it was certainly like
Designed to keep people out.
Yeah. And I mean, and sometimes they would have people come and collect the breads for donations, but unless somebody came and collected it, it would get tossed. And after that happened, I was just like, I cannot do this anymore. Like, it just upset me so much, like all the waste and stuff, like, but that especially, that was like the final straw. So anyways, then I ended up moving back here because my dad was running for governor. And I became his fundraising coordinator, manager, whatever.
Feels like you're getting roped into another pyramid scheme.
Yeah. No, and I was like, well, I guess if that's what you want me to do. And it was partially like they paid my rent for a while, and in exchange, you know, I would hopefully raise money for his campaign, which, I mean, I did okay, but not really. And actually, when I first moved back, we had to get signatures to get them on the board, or to get them on the ballot first. And that, I forget if we talked about that last time. That was quite a journey.
Yeah, because that was a lot of signatures.
Yeah,
that you had to go
stacked
out there
like this high. Like, it was a lot to go through, and then they got challenged, and then had to verify everything, and yeah, 27,000.
27,000. That's,
and we got 47,000, but we had to get, the minimum requirement is 25,000. We got 47,000, and by the time they were all verified, we were left with just barely 27,000.
that's a lot of signatures to get people to pull from a, like, was it reasonable things, or was it like somebody would write just something that was just off about the name on a town or something, or the address didn't have like a, you know, apartment B or something to that effect?
If there wasn't an apartment, if they didn't write street or west, or, I mean, okay, if anyone, public PSA here.
PSA.
If you ever are asked to sign an official thing, don't write Seadale or Emborough, because, and I now will catch those things and cross them out and write Carbondale. You also have to write street and the direction. And yes, if you have an apartment, you're supposed to write that. I mean, they would just throw them out. You know, usually I'm kind of joking about this because usually they aren't challenged, you know, with city council and county races. Who's going to bother, really?
Right.
Hopefully. But yeah, with the state thing, it was like, if the signatures look different, I mean, I don't know. I remember my brother's signature got thrown out. Walter Wendler was chancellor at the time, and his got thrown out.
What?
Like, we just had all these little, you know, I think my mom's got thrown out for some reason. Like, and because I went through the process, I went up to Chicago and did this. Like, we would sit there and go line by line with a State Board of Elections judge or employee or whatever. And then there was a Democratic rep and then a Green Party rep. And we'd go line by line, and the judge had the database of the voter, the voter registration database, and had like people's signatures and then where they were registered and what their name was. And if you put like, you know, if I had put like JC Bradshaw instead of Jessica Bradshaw, not like signing, but like when I had written out my name, that would be crossed off. because that's not how I'm registered.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was ridiculous. It was really crazy. And we had tried before, we had gone through for weeks, probably months before, and corrected all of the things that we could. Like,
Yeah.
I ended up using, yellowpages.com and like all these things, like, to try
Back when
and figure
there was
out.
still a rudimentary internet
Yeah.
compared to what it is now.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's still hard to look people up. Hopefully. I mean, as far as I know, I'm sure some people know better.
Right.
But yeah, no, we would try to use, I remember that's when I found out about the People Finder directory on SIU's website. So yeah, we tried to do just about anything, because you can write or strike out anything except for the person's signature.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
That's also interesting to know. I didn't realize that you could alter everything that's written aside from somebody's
from the signature. Which,
so if, like, they screwed up real bad outside of having to have their own signature match, you can fix all that stuff for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And
in the
some
tiny
were
little
just
box allotted.
some were just like, you could tell they were just drunk or just didn't really want you to read it or whatever. Like, they just write, Tom, Avenue.
Yeah. Just
Chicago.
get this out of my hands. I don't want to be.
And you were like, well, we're not gonna find this person.
Yeah.
Tom in Chicago. There's no way. So,
old Chicago Tom gets you every time.
Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting, but I never want to do that ever again. So
I don't blame you. I mean, just getting, I imagine, like, for your mom's use your brain, Nathan, congressional races, right? Like, I mean, that's still what, 3,000 signatures?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah. And it's still a pretty big area.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the thing I like about city. And we don't even have wards, so it's still the whole city, but it's so much less than, like, even the county has some weird spots.
Yeah.
But and the other thing is, and we've talked about this, the local Green Party has talked about this a little bit, but because we just had a census, we don't know how the new districts are going to be drawn, the new congressional or state districts.
I am under the impression, I would imagine that what we're going to see happen is cordoning off of the Metro East into its one single district, right? Because the fact that you've got the 13th, the 15th, and the 12th all pulling from a single metro area, they're going to look at that and go, oh, I want to have that as one voting block.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like whatever the Shimkus district is, that's 15, right? I think. That it's all going to become, like, it's just going to gobble up a chunk of Southern Illinois, and then you're going to have, like, Southern Illinois, and then, like, run up the east side of Illinois to encompass that, while they kind of cut off the Metro East and blend that into something there. But I don't know. Yeah. Like, you also have, like, a particular number of people that you have to get into a congressional district as well, right? I think ours is somewhere in the neighborhood of like 700,000 people is what you're supposed to have for it to be like a balanced congressional district. I don't know. I may not be anywhere near correct in that number, but I feel like I remember that being something like what you're supposed to concern yourself with. But.
Right. Yeah, I'm just really curious what they'll do with Carbondale, because right now it's split down 51, and then McCanda gets confusing too, because that's been hard with when we've gotten congressional signatures. Like, parts of McCanda are in Representative Boss's district, and then parts are in, I guess, Shimkus's, and then it's like it goes along 51 most of the way, but not all the way. So, Yeah, I hope they just put us all back in whichever district.
Just one big pool.
Yeah, yeah. But of
you're
course,
Southern
it probably
Illinois.
won't be.
That's who you are. Just be represented that way.
Yeah.
Right. Even Carbondale, as at a state level, right? The 115th and the 118th.
Yeah.
Right. Like, there's running up and the 115th gets real skinny through Pinckneyville.
Yeah.
And then keeps going.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be in charge of drawing these maps because you're right. Like, they all have to have the same even number of people. So, it's not like counties where you can just do blocks. But, like, yeah. Who designed that? Like,
no.
It's just crazy. So, yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think we're supposed to know census results in May.
I am concerned on multiple levels about what that's going to look like. Not just for Carbondale, but we're talking the country as a whole.
Yeah.
Right. Just because of how problematic the census activity
and
was.
the state.
I mean, it's not going to be good.
But we have a new state speaker now, and not just state speaker, but I guess Madigan resigned his whole seat.
Yeah.
Recently, so
which is I think is very exciting in terms of interest in Southern Illinois, because Chris Welch, like, have you been to any of his? I feel like he's come down and spoken at the Paul Simon Public Policy Institute multiple times.
I haven't. No, there's only so much you can pay attention to.
Oh yeah, that's the truth.
And the state is one of those that I feel like I've let slip, but I'm trying to catch up on it. But especially now that, I don't know. I was going to say that we don't have to track the president as much, but I still am kind of interested in.
Yeah.
I've been trying to pay attention to who he's picking, who Biden is picking for, like, cabinet positions and stuff, but yeah, I don't know. There's only so much brain space and time and whatever. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, like, should I let, like, I'll confess. I play a lot of computer games on my phone.
Uh-huh.
That's probably my worst habit as far as, like, habits go.
That's not that bad of a habit,
But,
Jessica. That's a perfectly normal thing.
A lot of time, right? Because you have to check in every day and get the little rewards on all the games. That's how they keep you going. That's how they get you addicted.
Yep.
So I keep thinking, like, especially this semester, until May, I keep thinking, like, I'm just going to delete them. I'm too hooked. I'm just going to delete them. But then I'm like, and do what? Like, do what with this time? But then I think about, like, man, yeah, I haven't paid any attention to the state, like the Capitol Facts blog. I used to read that so much back when my dad was running, to bring him back to that. And, yeah, I don't know.
You are allowed leisure time. Right. And to anybody that thinks, they look at somebody and they say, oh, well, this person does this, so they should only and always be reading and thinking and acting and doing whatever else. It's like, man, let people be people.
Yeah.
And, like, you're going to contribute at the levels that you decide to contribute at. Like, you contribute at a lot of different levels, Jessica. Like, I wouldn't fault yourself too much on that side of things as to whether or not you play a phone game a little bit too much. Like,
no, I know. Sometimes I get into that, like, man, how is it that people, like, raise kids and, like, work full time and, like, do all these other things? Like, man, I feel like I'm busy and I don't even have kids. And then I'm like, well, I am, like, finishing a degree and on city council and working full time and, okay, well, I guess that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like, and sometimes having a dog feels like having a kid, especially a really smart one.
Right. That's what I was getting ready to say. I was like, especially having your dog
Yeah,
could feel like.
Uh, this was the first time I left the house, not for work, and didn't take her in a long time, and she was very upset with me, and she did not. I had to bribe her to come back inside the house when I left.
Was she trying? So she was trying to like chase you out into the car and.
Well, So when I changed to come here, I was like, okay, I'm gonna change. I'm gonna have to go in the car, but you're not allowed to come.
Yeah.
And she just heard the word car and go. And she like started getting excited. We were sitting on the bed and she started doing that like pushing and leaning into me thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, she jumped up on me and, she herded me towards the door. And then she didn't want to go outside on her own because she knows that's a trick, that I'm not going out unless my socks and shoes are on and I have my coat on. And she's too smart. So then she went out and then she didn't want to come back in because I was like, ready to go. And I'm like, come on, come inside. And she like did the thing where she like looks at me and then she looks away. And she's by the gate. I'm like, come on, I'll give you a treat. Come on, you want a treat? And then she kind of puts her head down and walks inside, and I gave her a treat. Border collies, man, they're too smart.
Yeah. Well, and they're like sheep dogs, right? So they're used to having control over their environment that's kind of bred into them.
Yeah.
So when they don't have that control, ooh, I'm real sad.
I actually just learned something from a YouTube video of dog training, because I'm trying to help another friend who has a dog, who's a new dog owner, and so I was looking through dog training videos for her, but then also, just, how YouTube is, you just start clicking, and it's for dogs who bark a lot, and one thing that this trainer was saying is that sometimes it's because they feel like they have to be, like they are the one in control. And so you have to say, no, actually, I'm in control and I will make sure that it's safe. Because if they're like looking outside and barking at things, it's because they're like, you're not paying attention, so I need to alert you. And I had done this before a little bit. Like if she was like at the door barking, I'd be like, what is it, the mailman? I'd walk over and look. But that's what this guy was saying is if your dog like looks out the window and starts barking, you should go over, like look and be like, it's okay, and pat your dog and then like relax them basically. And if it doesn't stop, like put them in a confined space, like, for a little while till they calm down, because it can be anxiety inducing if they see like other things going on outside. But that's kind of worked. And I'm just like, wow. Like that, it's so interesting when you're like, man, like on one hand, my dog is so smart, but on the other hand, like it's all the same kind of stuff that all dogs do, So I gotta practice it more because she's still like, she gets up and barks and stuff when I'm,
not giving the attention to what she thinks you should be giving the attention to.
Yeah. Like anytime a car door slams anywhere on the block,
That's almost a good metaphor for the public participation process. I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole, but I just like I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well we got a little bit of discussion about city council. I was like, what does this kind of sound like? Oh, this could sound like public participation sometimes.
Yeah.
Hey, you're not looking over here. Look over here. Look over here. It's like, no, I actually am looking over there. Thank you very much. Just I don't need to go bite the mailman's butt right now.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because the neighbor dogs who she has like a frenemy thing with, former councilman Chris Wisman and Jess Job live next door, and they have 2 dogs and they're frenemies. They bark when the mailman comes, but that's because they have a mail slot and they get really excited. Like they actually like when the mailman comes. And it's a good relationship. Whereas my dog, it is not. There's someone coming up the steps. And I remember, again, reading something in a training thing that was like, unfortunately, with a mailman coming up the steps, putting the mail in, and then walking away, it actually trains your dog that if they bark, the person goes away. Right? Because that's what the mailman does.
Yeah.
He gives you mail and then he leaves. So the dog barks and then the person goes away. And so, like, that's like, oh, cool, it worked. My barking worked. They left. So it's interesting. It was something that I was like, oh, man, yeah. You can't, like, that's not something that you can not have happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was just a funny dog training thing.
Now that makes sense. That like, you know, they are receiving the reinforcement that they think they want out of that, even though it's not even in the realm of reality.
Yeah.
That no, the mailman just goes away after dropping stuff off. That's how it goes.
But then next door, I found out it's actually excited barking, because you know
the
they
mailman's
like the
here.
mailman.
I've got this stuff.
Yeah.
Woo.
Yeah. So it's funny.
How are you doing in your final stretch of the MPA? Are you ready to, to tear your hair out?
Right now, everything's okay. I think. Okay. So I'm taking seminar and pre-professional seminar.
Okay.
Or something like that. So the seminar is a regular 3 credit hour class, and we have people, come in on Zoom every week and then talk about their jobs, and then we're supposed to write up a journal or whatever. We actually had the first 2 cancel. One just had to cancel, and then the second one was the snowstorm when SIU said all classes are being canceled virtually or not. So our first assignment was postponed because we didn't have anything to write about. And then we finally had someone this last Thursday. So that's our seminar one. And then pre-professional seminar, there's 2 major things. One is working on a portfolio, which we're supposed to go back over all the work that we've done during the degree and put it into a portfolio. Well, for most students, that's like I think it's a 2 or 3 year program, the MPA. And for me, it's been 6 years because I've been doing one class at a time because I'm working full time.
Yeah.
And, as civil service, I get 1 or 2 free classes a semester, but more than one seemed like a lot. Yeah. So now that I have to do this portfolio, I didn't know until probably last semester that I was supposed to keep my work. B, it's like way more than just like, get some writing samples. It's like you have to put in your portfolio your work, what class it's from, and what like principles of public administration apply to it, and like all this stuff. And so you have to have, it's like a massive document. Like I don't even know where to even begin with it. You also have to have a management philosophy. So what's your philosophy of public administration and public management? So that'll also be interesting and something I need to work on. And then also, we have comprehensive exams, which I believe are going to be right before the city council elections.
Goodness gracious.
So
Jessica.
they're usually at the end of spring break, but SIU doesn't have a spring break this year.
Uh-huh.
So I think they're going to be at the end of March. So not right before, but pretty close to right before.
You stay sharp on it, though. I mean, in the very least, it all kind of comes together and intersects at the same spot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it is interesting, so, with public administration, a lot of the stuff that we read is like, okay, well, you have civil service and, public administrators here, and then you have politicians here.
Mm-hmm.
And, never the twain shall meet.
Mm-hmm.
But with city council, I feel like it's not really, I mean, yes, I'm a politician, but am I really?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not just because most people think politician's a dirty word, like it has this negative connotation.
But it's like the service that you provide as a member of the city council and the way representation works.
Well, and it's also like, I mean, there's 7 of us, so it's a little different than being a representative and being the only representative to that district. Although now I'm realizing, well, maybe it's similar in that there are, other representatives when you get to Congress or the state house. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
You're the only one who has to make that decision for your district. But here it's like the 7 of us kind of, I like to think, work mostly as a team.
Yeah.
I know that hasn't always been true, but I feel like the last couple
the city council
years,
as it sits now is a very cohesive unit.
Yeah.
That's a good way to describe it.
Yeah. Especially since I've been on. I mean, I think there have been, certainly we can disagree. We don't always vote unanimously.
Yeah.
But, compared to when I first moved back and started getting into city politics, it was like, well, this person won't vote for this because she's voting for this, and he won't vote for this because he's voting for that. So, no matter if they even agree, they're not going to vote the same way.
Just because.
And there were some tense meetings before I got elected, especially right before. So yeah, I mean, I don't know.
So that by itself is interesting to me, because 12, 16, however many years ago, people may have looked at the city council and gone, so-and-so from the city council thinks this way, so-and-so from the city council thinks that way, right? But now, right, and in specific reference to kind of just something that you'd put out there the other day, it's just that now when city council it's referred to as a whole, right? And everybody's kind of in it. And you may have mentions and statements from folks in there, but really people look at the city council not as its individual components, but as a sum of the whole. And, while it could be frustrating, from time to time, if you disagree with a particular thing with your colleagues and want that to be separated out, that may be a tough part on one side. But on the other side of it is that I think that's just generally good governance. If the whole community looks at it and goes, the city council is together, right? It is a holistic unit, and that's how they associate it, not as its individual parts, for better or for worse in terms of public perception, but in terms of the actual functional component of it, I think that's a plus side. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and it's interesting. There are some people who, and I won't name names, but there are some people who I was like, I'm not sure. When I said this to my dad last time I was running, because he was like, well, aren't you in support of, it was somebody who didn't even make it on, but we shared a lot of the same views, but I was like, I don't think they would be very good on that group.
Yeah.
And so that's how I look at it is more of a group dynamics thing,
Yeah.
which is one of the courses that I studied in college that was one of the most meaningful, informative courses that I ever took. It was geared more towards teachers, but I took it.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad I did. That and nonviolent communication.
Did you have Suzanne Doughton as well?
Huh?
Did you have Suzanne Doughton as well for that?
That was not here. That was
okay.
back in my undergrad.
Oh, sorry.
And I've just never looked into meeting the same way again.
Yeah.
After I took group dynamics. Yeah. It's just very interesting. And also being well, that's another topic, but with city council, yeah, I look at it as like, you know, especially because it is local decisions. It's not necessarily, you know, I always use the you know, like zoning issue. Like, how does, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican or Green or whatever, how does that influence how you're going to vote on a zoning issue?
Yeah.
You know?
It's not, for the most part, unless it's like, hey, we want to dump coal ash into this here tributary. And
well, and even then, probably for your own community,
yeah,
unless you're getting a kickback, you're going to say no, you know? I mean, hopefully. But, but yeah.
So long as you're not like an evil villain from Captain Planet or something.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. Burns. But yeah, no, I mean, I always use that example, but there's plenty of others. Like, that's why I'm glad it's a nonpartisan election too. Because yeah, you just want people who are going to be like, you don't want people who are agreeable in that they'll just go along with whatever, but you want people who aren't going to be so stubborn that they'll stand in the way. You know,
you want people that have a good group dynamic.
Exactly. Yeah, people who are open and willing to communicate, good communicators. In both ways, you know.
No, that's good.
So yeah, it's been interesting because there are some people who I wouldn't necessarily, you know, think that we would share a lot of the same views, but we have.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like the way things have gone in the past. Like I said, 8 years. I can't believe it's been 8 years since I've been on council, but yeah. I'm ready to do another 4. So
awesome. I think that is the right place to end the podcast. Jessica Bradshaw is ready for another 4. I love the group dynamic thing. I think it's so fitting. It's good.
I mean, taking that class really, man, that was just because I was in an RSO type of group at the time, and that's what I did my final paper on, and it just blew my mind.
Yeah. And I get the same feeling. Like, organizing performers is very much a similar thing, right? I think of, back in the olden times when I used to have 12 amateur comedians all in one place at one time. It's like, I get that. I get that dynamic.
Yeah.
And that is the dynamic of episode 40. The first episode with our repeat guest, Jessica Bradshaw. Somebody who has been on city council for 8 years and is still a candidate now for 2021. I said it correctly this time. Municipal elections, and just part of the series of interviews with all the different candidates who all themselves are interesting people living interesting lives, and of course absolutely love our little community here of Carbondale. So have a good one, folks, whatever that one may be.